Good day, everyone. Today, we are going to tackle about the 1973 constitutional authoritarianism. But before we start, do you want to know a secret? Of course, you do, because we Filipinos love secrets. Don't worry, I will tell you the secret through this lesson. So now, let's proceed first to the definition of terms. The first term is the Constitution. It is a set of rules that guides how a country, state, or other political organization works, whereas authoritarian refers to a governing relationship style by the concentration of power. Post-war Philippine governments. So, this passage describes the transition of the Philippines from Japanese occupation to independence. In 1944, the Philippines was liberated from Japanese control by American forces. The Americans reinstated the Commonwealth government, a pre-war government established in 1935, with Sergio Osmeña as president. So President Manuel Quezon, the original leader of the Commonwealth, had died in exile in the United States. Whereas, in 1946, as promised by the Tidings-McDuffie Law, the United States granted the Philippines its independence on July 4, 1946. So this independence marked the beginning of the Third Republic of the Philippines. So it continued to use the 1935 Constitution that was established during the Commonwealth period. So the presidents that in that time were Manuel Rojas, Elpidio Quirino, Ramon Magsaysay, Diosdado Macapagal, and Ferdinand Marcos. In 1965, Ferdinand Marcos was elected as the president. And in 1967, Philippine Congress passed resolution calling for a constitutional convention to change the 1935 Constitution. So, Marcos won the re-election in 1969 with a campaign that involved excessive spending and misuse of government funds. In November 1970, the delegates for the Constitutional Convention were elected. So, the convention officially began in June 1971 with former President Carlos P. Garcia that was chosen as its leader. In this slide, it's stated here that in 1970, a law was passed to hold elections for 320 delegates to the Constitutional Convention on November 10. Former President Carlos P. Garcia was elected as the convention president, as I stated earlier. However, he died shortly after and was replaced by another former president, which is Diosdado Macapagal. Before the convention finished its work, President Marcos declared martial law, citing a growing communist insurgency.
The convention started its work writing the Constitution on June 1, 1971. The 1935 Constitution, with reference to the Malolos Constitution, was made the basis for the drafting of amendments to the new Constitution. After 15 months, on its 29th plenary session on November 29, 1972, the convention approved the new proposed charter of the land. So it says that a group of people gathered to create a new constitution for the country. So they started their work on June 1, 1971 to help them. They look at the 1935 Constitution and also took ideas from an older one called the Malolos Constitution. So after 15 months of discussions and meetings, 291 sessions in total, they finished the new version on November 29, 1972, Out of all members, 200 voted for yes and 15 voted for no, so 27 were absent and one person chose not to vote. On the other day, November 30, 1972, they officially signed the new constitution. Earlier, on September 21, 1972, Marcos issued Proclamation number 1081, placing the entire country under martial law to broaden the base of citizen participation in the democratic process and to afford ample opportunities for the citizenry to express their views on important matters of local or national concern. It says that on September 21, 1972, President Marcos declared martial law through Proclamation number 1081, which means to military law control of the country and people's rights were limited. Later, on December 3, 1972, he issued Presidential Decree number 86. They created citizens' assemblies in every barrio or village and district and cities. The goal was to give ordinary people more chances to participate in decision making and share their opinions on important local and national issues. Subsequently, Presidential Decree number 86 was issued on January 5, 1973, defining the role of barangays or formerly citizens' assemblies. So it says that on January 5, 1973, President Marcos issued Presidential Decree number 86. So this law changed citizens' assemblies into barangays or small community units. So the goal was to make barangays a way for ordinary people to have a say in government matters. Under this system, the opinions and ideas of people in barangays were to be considered when making national policies and programs. Whenever possible, these ideas would be turned into clear and specific government decisions. Under the same decree, the barangays will conduct a referendum on national issues between January 10 to 15, 1973. So there are two questions asked. The number one is, do you approve of the new constitution? And the number two is, do you still want to plebiscite to ratify or officially approve the new constitution? So it is a process was meant to gather people's opinions on the new constitution and whether a larger, more formal vote was still needed to approve it.
The result of revealed that 14,976,561 members of all the barangay citizen assemblies vote for the adaptation of the proposed constitution. As agent, 743,869 who voted for its rejection. On question as to whether or not the people would still like a plebiscite to be called to ratify the new constitution, 14,298,814 answered that there was no need for a plebiscite. So, like a bunch of people around, 14,976,561 to be exact, vote yes to new constitution. And like only 743,869 people said no. And get this, 14,298,814 people said we don't even need a plebiscite. That like super clear, diba? So yeah, it seems like most people really this new constitution. On the basis of the above result showing that more than 90% of the members of the barangay citizen assemblies were in favor of the new constitution, and upon the strong recommendation of the Katipunan ng Barangay, Marcos issued Proclamation number 1102 on January 17, 1973, certifying and proclaiming that the Constitution proposed by the 1971 Constitutional Convention had been ratified by the Filipino people in Aviva Voce vote and had thereby come in effect. So like over 95% of the people who know the barangay hall were totally into this new constitution. And the katipunan ng mga barangay, this is super important group was like, this is the way to go. So Marcos was all, okay, let's make it official. An issue proclamation number 1102, the 1973 constitution was attained, and it is was all thanks to the people overwhelming support. The 1973 Constitution was amended by the following. The first, in 1976, gave the President the legislative powers even the interim batasang pambansang was early operating. So, like way back in 1976, they gave the President who no extra power. This was a bit weird because the interim batasang pambansa, basically a temporary lawmaking body, was early up running. It's like giving someone a superpower up when they early have pretty cool power. The second in 1980 was not significant. It merely raised the retirement of justice of the EC from 65 to 70 as to keep Fernando for 5 more years. So the next big change happened in 1980. It was a huge deal. Really, they just decided to extend the retirement age for Supreme Court justice from 65 to 70. Basically, they wanted to keep a specific justice Fernando around for a few more years. The third, in 1980, changed the form of government from parliamentary to presidential. So in 1980, they flipped the switch on the government. They went from a parliamentary system where power is shared between the executive and legislative branches to a presidential system where the president is head of state and government. The fourth, in 1984, responded to the succession problem by providing for a vice president. Then in 1984, they realized they need a backup plan, so they added a vice president to the mix. They way, if something happened to the president, the vice president could step in. The 1973 Constitution promulgated after Marcos' declaration of martial law was supposed to introduce a parliamentary style government. So after Marcos declared martial law, they rolled out this new 1973 constitution. It was supposed, supposed to be a parliamentary style government, which is kind of like sharing powers between the executive and legislative branches. The big lawmaking body was the National Assembly, and its member served for 6 years. Now here the third part, the president was supposed to be more of a figurehead, like a fancy ceremonial leaders. They be chosen from the National Assembly members and could serve unlimited terms. It was pretty unique setup, that for sure.
So, here are the analysis of 1973 constitutional authoritarianism. In conclusion, Ferdinand Marcos was the central figure in the implementation of the 1973 Constitution in the subsequent period of constitutional authoritarianism in the Philippines. He used the Constitution to consolidate his power, suppress dissent, and ultimately rule as a dictator. So, his roles are or were president and architect of the Constitution, the one who manipulates the system, and he was the one who declared martial law. That's all, everyone, and I hope you learned something from this lesson. Thank you.